according to St. Matthew, chapter 23. Then Jesus spoke to the crowds and to his disciples. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees are the authorized interpreters of Moses' law. So you must obey and follow everything they tell you to do. Do not, however, imitate their actions, because they do not practice what they preach. They tie onto people's backs loads that are heavy and hard to carry, yet they aren't willing even to lift a finger to help them carry those loads. They do everything so that people will see them. Look at the straps with scripture verses on them, which they wear on their foreheads and arms, and notice how large they are. Notice how long the tassels on their cloaks. They love the best place at the feasts and the reserved seats in the synagogues. They love to be greeted with respect in marketplaces and to have people call them teacher. You must not be called teacher, because you are all equal and have only one teacher. And you must not call anyone here on earth Father, because you have only one Father in heaven. Nor should you be called leader, because your one and only leader is the Messiah. The greatest one among you must be your servant. Whoever makes himself great will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be made great. How terrible for you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You lock the door to the kingdom of heaven in people's faces, but you yourselves don't go in, nor do you allow in those who are trying to enter. How terrible for you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You sail the seas and cross whole countries to win one convert, and when you succeed, you make him twice as deserving of going to hell as you yourselves are. How terrible for you, blind guides! You teach, if someone swears by the temple, he isn't bound by his vow, but if he swears by the gold of the temple, he is bound. Blind fools! Which is more important, the gold or the temple which makes the gold holy? You also teach, if someone swears by the altar, he isn't bound by his vow, but if he swears by the gift of the altar, he is bound. How blind you are! Which is more important, the gift or the altar which makes the gift holy? So then, when a person swears by the altar, he is swearing by it and by all the gifts on it. And when he swears by the temple, he is swearing by it and by God who lives there. And when someone swears by heaven, he is swearing by God's throne and by him who sits on it. How terrible for you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give to God 1/10 of even of the seasoning herbs such as mint, dill and cumin, but you neglect to obey the really important teachings of the law, such as justice and mercy and honesty. These you should practice without neglecting the others. Blind guides! You strain a fly out of your drink, but swallow a camel. How terrible for you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of your cup and plate, while inside is full of what you have gotten by violence and selfishness. Blind Pharisees, clean what is inside the cup first, and then the outside will be clean too. How terrible for you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look fine on the outside, but are full of bones and decaying corpses, and on the inside, in the same way, on the outside you appear good to everybody, but inside you're full of hypocrisy and sins. How terrible for you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You make fine tombs for the prophets and decorate the monuments of those who live good lives. And you claim that if you had lived during the time of your ancestors, you would not have done what you did and killed the prophets. So you actually admit that you are the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Go on. then and finish up what your ancestors started. You snakes and children of snakes, how do you expect to escape from being condemned to hell? And so I tell you that I will send you prophets and wise men and teachers. You will kill some of them, crucify others, and whip others in the synagogues, and chase them away from town to town. As a result, the punishment for the murders of all innocent people will fall on you, from the murder of innocent Abel to the murder of Zechariah son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. I tell you indeed, the punishment for all these murders will fall on the people of this day. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you killed the prophets and stoned the messengers God has sent you. How many times I wanted to put my arms around all your people, just as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you would not let me, and so your temple will be abandoned and empty. From now on, I tell you, you will never see me again until you say, God bless him who comes in the name of the Lord. Matthew chapter 24. Jesus left and was going away from the temple when his disciples came to him to call his attention to its buildings. Yes, he said, you may well look at all these. I tell you this, not a single stone here will be left in its place. Every one of them will be thrown down. As Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him in private. Tell us when all this will be, they asked, and what will happen to show that it is the time for your coming and the end of the age? Jesus answered, watch out and do not let anyone fool you. Many men claiming to speak for me will come and say, I am the Messiah, and they will fool many people. You're going to hear the noise of battles close by and the news of battles far away. But do not be troubled. Such things must happen, but they do not mean that the end has come. Countries will fight each other, kingdoms will attack one another. There will be famines and earthquakes everywhere. All these things are like the first pains of childbirth. Then you will be arrested and handed over to be punished and be put to death. Everyone will hate you because of me. Many will give up their faith. At that time, they will betray one another and hate one another. Then many false prophets will appear and fool many people. Such will be the spread of evil that many people's love will grow cold. But whoever holds out to the end will be saved. And this good news about the kingdom will be preached through all the world for a witness to all people, and the end will come. You will see the awful horror which the prophet Daniel spoke. It will be standing in the holy place. Then those in Judea must run away to the hills. Someone who is on the roof of a house must not take the time to go down and get any belongings from the house. Someone who is in the field must not go back to get a cloak. How terrible it will be in those days for women who are pregnant and for the mothers with little babes. Pray to God that He will not have to run away during the winter or on a Sabbath, for the trouble at that time will be far more terrible than there has ever been, from the beginning of the world to this very day, nor will there be anything like it again. But God has already reduced the number of days. Had He not done so, nobody would survive. For the sake of His chosen people, however, God will reduce the days. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is a Messiah, or there he is, do not believe it, for false messiahs and false prophets will appear. They will perform great miracles and wonders in order to deceive even God's chosen people, if possible. Listen, I have told you this ahead of time. Or if people should tell you, look, he is out in the desert, don't go there. Or if they say, look, he is hiding here, don't believe it, for the Son of Man will be like the lightning which flashes across the sky from the east to the west. Wherever there is a dead body, the vultures will gather. Soon after the trouble of those days, the sun will grow dark, the moon will no longer shine, and stars will fall from heaven, and the powers in space will be driven from their course. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the peoples of the earth will weep as they see the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. The great trumpet will sound, and he will send out his angels to the four corners of the earth, and they will gather his chosen people from one end of the world to the other. Let the fig tree teach you a lesson. When its branches become green and tender, and it starts putting out leaves, you know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see all these things, you will know that the time is near, ready to begin. Remember that all these things will happen before the people now living have all died. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. No one knows, however, when that day and hour will come, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son. The Father alone knows. The coming of the Son of Man will be like what happened in the time of Noah. In the days before the flood, people ate and drank. Men and women married up to the very day Noah went into the boat, yet they did not realize what was happening until the flood came and swept them all away. This is how it will be when the Son of Man comes. At that time, two men will be working in a field. One will be taken away and the other will be left behind. Two women will be at a mill grinding meal. One will be taken away, the other will be left behind. Watch out then, because you do not know what day your Lord will come. If the owner of a house knew the time when the thief would come, you can be sure that he would stay awake and not let the thief break into his house. So then, you also must always be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you are not expecting him. Who then is a faithful and wise servant? It is the one that his master has placed in charge of the other servants to give him their food at the proper time. How happy that servant is if his master finds him doing this when he comes home. Indeed, I tell you, the master will put that servant in charge of all his property. But if he is a bad servant, he will tell himself that his master will not come back for a long time, and he will begin to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards. Then that servant's master will come back one day when the servant does not expect him, and at a time he does not know. The master will cut him in pieces and make him share the faith of the hypocrites. There he will cry and gnash his teeth. Matthew chapter 25. At that time the kingdom of heaven will be like this. Once there were 10 young women who took their oil lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and the other 5 were wise. The foolish ones took their lamps but did not take any extra oil with them, while the wise ones took containers full of oil for their lamps. The bridegroom was late in coming, so they began to nod and fall asleep. It was already midnight when the cry rang out, "Here is the bridegroom, come and meet him." The 10 young women woke up and trimmed their lamps. Then the foolish ones said to the wise ones, "Let us have some of your oil, because our lamps are going out." "No, indeed," the wise ones answered, "there is not enough for you and us. Go to the store and buy some for yourselves." So the foolish ones went off to buy some oil. And while they were gone, the bridegroom arrived. The 5 who were ready went in with him to the wedding feast, and the door was closed. Later the others arrived. "Sir, sir, let us in," they cried out. "Certainly not. I do not know you," the bridegroom answered. And Jesus concluded, "Watch out then, because you do not know the day or the hour." At this time the kingdom of heaven will be like this. Once there was a man who was about to leave home on a trip. He called his servants and put them in charge of his property. He gave to each one according to his ability. To one he gave 5,000 gold coins, To another he gave 2,000, and to another he gave 1,000. Then he left on his trip. The servant who had received 5,000 coins went at once and invested his money and earned another 5,000. The same way, the servant who had received 2,000 coins earned another 2,000. But the servant who had received 1,000 coins went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants came back and settled accounts with them. The servant who had received 5,000 coins came in and handed over the other 5,000. You gave me 5,000 coins, sir, he said. Look, here are another 5,000 that I have earned. Well done, you good and faithful servant, said his master. You have been faithful in managing small amounts, so I will put you in charge of large amounts. Come on in and share my happiness. Then the servant who had been given 2,000 coins came in and said, You gave me 2,000 coins, sir. Look, here are another 2,000 that I have earned. Well done, you good and faithful servant, said his master. You have been faithful in managing small amounts, so I will put you in charge of large amounts. Come on in and share my happiness. Then the servant who had received 1,000 coins came in and said, Sir, I know you are a hard man. You reap harvest where you did not plant, and you gather crops where you did not scatter seed. I was afraid, so I went off and hid your money in the ground. Look, here is what belongs to you. You bad and lazy servant, his master said. You knew, did you, that I reap harvest where I did not plant, and gather crops where I did not scatter seed? Well, then you should have deposited my money in the bank, and I would have received it all back with interest when I returned. Now take the money away from him and give it to the one who has 10,000 coins. For to every person who has something, even more will be given, and he will have more than enough. But the person who has nothing, even the little that he has will be taken away from him. As for this useless servant, throw him outside in the darkness. There he will cry and gnash his teeth. When the Son of Man comes as King, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his royal throne, and the people of all the nations will be gathered before him. Then he will divide them into two groups, just as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the righteous people at his right and the others at his left. Then the king will say to the people on his right, Come, you that are blessed by my Father, come and possess the kingdom which has been prepared for you ever since the creation of the world. I was hungry, and you fed me, thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you received me in your homes. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you took care of me. In prison, you visited me. The righteous will then answer him, When, Lord, did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you a drink? When did we ever see you a stranger and welcome you in our homes, or naked and clothe you? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you? The king will reply, I tell you, whenever you did this for one of these least important of these followers of mine, you did it for me. And then he will say to those on his left, Away from me, you that are under God's curse, away to the eternal fire, which has been prepared for the devil and his angels. I was hungry, but you would not feed me, thirsty, but you would not give me a drink. I was a stranger, but you would not welcome me in your homes, naked, but you would not clothe me. I was sick, in prison, but you would not take care of me. Then they will answer him, When, Lord, did we ever see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and we would not help you? The king will reply, I tell you, whenever you refuse to help one of these least important ones, you refuse to help me. These then will be sent off to eternal punishment, but the righteous will go to eternal life.